to welcome everyone. That's new to me, having an online conference. That's good, that's new. The only thing we will be missing is socializing afterwards, but I guess nowadays we just wait a bit to do that again, right? So I hope everyone's safe, everyone's home. Stay safe, stay healthy. And thanks a lot for everyone attending the conference, but also for organizing that. It's a pleasure to be part of that. Today, I wanna walk you through 45 random Apex tips. I guess you will probably know most of them, but there will be some new things to you, maybe even some useful things. Let's just hope for that. So enjoy the trip. And do remember, those tips are random, in random order, so let's get surprised. We have roughly 200 slides, so that should suffice for the next 40-something minutes. Okay, number one, bind variables. What's that? This is what you do and what you should do inside of Apex. Anywhere you have SQL code or PL SQL code, please use the bind notation, like the two dots and the item name. There you're safe. Apex will treat it as real bind variables, so that's good. Everyone loves it. You could also do something like that, the ampersand dot notation. This is not good. It will work, but it will open door for SQL injection. We don't want to do that. So please, please, please stay safe and use the column here. Okay, that's good. That's less good. Okay, simple rule of thumb, always use the bind syntax in SQL and PL SQL code within Apex to avoid SQL injection. It can be so simple, that's amazing. So your code could look like that, right? Always use the bind notation there. Awesome. Since Apex 5, we have the awesome universal theme. And since then, almost every application I see looks kind of similar. There's the navigation bar on the side and there's content in the center. But did you know that with a simple setting in the user interface attributes, you can change the menu from the side to the top, and then it looks like that. Great. You have more space for the real content, but of course it's suited better for just a few navigation entries, not if you have like 100 of those. Themeroller, I mean, that's hardly a tip, right? Everyone should know the Themeroller and everyone should use it. It's so simple. If you're logged on to the application builder and you're under your application, click the little Themeroller icon in your developer toolbar, and then you can see all the options you have. It's very simple to change the universal theme to your liking, to add a bit of rounding to the edges or to change the colors. And there's an endless list of things you can do there. Save your theme style and share it with others. Live template options. Funnily, that's something most people are not aware of. So a while ago, Apex introduced that quick edit thing in the developer toolbar. So once you click quick edit and you hover the mouse over your page, regions and items will be highlighted. When you hover over them and you click, you jump to the application builder and you can edit it right away. But there is something new. There is that little range icon in the top right corner. And once you click the range icon, a pop-up appears and you can change template options. And you can immediately see how it visually changes. So this is really helpful. Saving it, stores the chosen template options in Application Builder, and everything is good. So that's a very easy way to, to change visual attributes of your regions. And it applies to not only regions, but only to items and buttons and basically everything that has template options. So if you just noticed, I touched my face, right? That's okay. I'm at home. It's everything safe. All right, session sharing. That's really good. And it's as old as Apex. There is the tiny setting in the authentication scheme where you can define if your application wants to share the session ID with other applications in the same workspace. And if you think about it, that's exactly what Apex does. If you log on to Apex, you are in application 4550. But if you go to Application Builder, that's a different application ID. SQL Workshop has another application ID, and so on. But it's seamless for you. You just jump between applications and pages and you don't even notice it. And you can do the same for your applications. So the default in your authentication scheme is no sharing. But you could also set it to workspace sharing. So all apps in your workspace having the same setting can share the session. You can jump between app 100 and 200, for example. If you want to have it a bit more custom, you can define a cookie name, and all applications that use the same cookie names and settings in the same workspace can share the sessions. So you could have two types of applications in your workspace. Some of those have cookie name A and they share a session. Other apps have cookie name B and they share another session. Error handling function. Every time Apex throws an error, there's an unhandled exception, you can catch this exception in one spot. That's the error handling function. You can define it on application level or on page level. And it's quite simple. Apex calls this application, this error handling function, passes in the exception and the exception stack, and you can manipulate it. You can clear it, you can log it, you can change the text to make it more user-friendly. Whatever you want to do, it's awesome and everyone should use it. There is hardly any good documentation on it, but there is a really good working sample of an error handling function in the sample database packaged application. So you can go there and take a look, and you can see there's a lot of comments in there what you can do actually. It's really good stuff. But if it's just about changing the text of an Aura message, that's even easier. On this screen, you can see two examples. The pop-up in the middle, that's from an Ajax call, like, I don't know, execute PL SQL code, dynamic action. And the other thing on top there is from process page submit, throws an error, something like that. And it's really nice. So instead of Aura something, you would like to show a better, more user-friendly message. And you can actually achieve that simply by defining a text message. So you go to shared components, text messages, and you define a text message with that scheme, apex.error.aura. And then that's a trick thing here, the SQL code. It's not always the same as the Aura message number, it's the SQL code you need to enter here. So for example, look at that. I defined two text messages, one to catch no data found and the other one to catch invalid number. And once those messages are defined, Apex will show it accordingly. Sorry, there's a screen missing for that, an example. But that's a really nice thing here to do. I bet hardly anyone knows it, and I'm even more sure that nobody has a use case for that. But there is a substitution variable, and it's just that. You cannot change the format. If you use this substitution variable, you will get the sysdate in exactly that date format. Okay? Okay. Well, hey, we are making good progress. Number 9, speaking of substitution strings, right? Apex is getting more and more secure, and gives you some tools to help your code. And then one of the things is how to treat substitution strings. See this example. P1 item will be substituted with its content, but if you use it in a sensitive place, you can specify, hey, please either give me the raw value, like what it really is, or hey, please escape it for use in HTML or in JavaScript, or escape it as an attribute value. That's great. You definitely should use that. Text messages, it's been there since the beginning of Apex. Text messages are meant to be used to have translatable strings within code. And there's an API, apex-lang.message, where you apply the message name, and then it will be replaced with the message definition in the current language. Okay, so that existed forever. Quite new is there's a substitution syntax for that. You say &app text $, and then the name of your text message and period. And that will be replaced with the value, with the text message for the current application language. If you want to specify a specific language, then you just add $ and the language name, in short. Completely different topic, database links. If, let's say, you are on a huge database, right? And there are hundreds of applications on this database, and some of these applications use database links to other databases. Well, if it's just some of those apps, right, you should think of closing them, because the database links will stay open all the time. So why should you care? You probably ask. Well, there is quite interesting story, and it's a good example. So one day I got a call from a client. They told me, hey, suddenly all apps are slow. And then, we played the usual game. Hey, what did you do? They told me, no, they didn't change anything. And I didn't believe, and it was going back and forth. So after a while, they said, well, out of their data center, they moved one database to a different data center far away. But that database isn't used by any Apex app except one. So what happened there was they were running multiple Apex apps through one ORDS, and ORDS has a connection pool to the database. And every time you send an Apex request, you get a different connection of your pool. And whenever they hit that one specific app that used the database link, it grabbed one session from the connection pool, opened the database link, and then put the connection back. And over some time, all of the application, all of the connection pool was polluted by open database links. That's still no problem. But when you request an Apex page, or you submit an Apex page, or you use an Ajax call, Apex in the beginning initializes the session it gets, which means it does some alter session, set NLS lang, blah, 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 blah. A lot of things. And when you do that with an open database link in your session, this alter session is applied to your local connection, but also to the remote database. So in that particular case, the latency connecting to the other database was very high. So all those alter session commands in the beginning of Apex caused all the apps to slow down. Make sense? Okay, so close the database links, and there is even a place for it. You go to your application definition security and go to the cleanup PL/SQL code section, and there you can close the database link. And you know what? It's even mentioned in the help text. So if you click on the question mark icon next to the cleanup PL/SQL code text area, it will tell you how to close the database links. Okay. Link to a saved interactive report. So you know the Apex URLs, they're actually very powerful. Look at this example. If you open a certain page, you can specify which interactive report view you want to show. That's quite good. Think of this example. You have an interactive report, and this report has different views. You got one master view or one primary view. You have some saved views. You can link to a particular saved view. That's quite helpful. If, of course, you have more than one interactive report on a page, you also need to specify which report you're talking about. So that's quite nice. Quite similar, when linking to a page with an interactive report, you can also pass filters in the URL. So you can pre-filter the report you're opening. And it works exactly the same way as passing values to page items. So in the item name and value section, you specify the column alias of your interactive report and the filter criteria. That's the syntax. If you have more than one interactive report, you need to specify which report you're talking about. You can specify an operator. If you do not specify it, then equal is used, but you could use like or greater than or something like that. And then the column alias. So it's not the header of the column, but it's your query column alias. Very useful. Shortcuts, that's my favorite URL, and I use it probably multiple times every day. apex.oracle.com/shortcuts. That's the only thing you need to remember. That's a hub which shows you some other shortcuts to link you to all interesting Apex things. As you can see, you can go to the documentation in a specific version. You can look at books and whatever. Very, very useful. The Spotlight search. I don't know when it was introduced, Apex 5.1, I think. It can be activated on an English American keyboard using Control and the quote key. And it's a powerful search in the end. Depends on where you are. Are you already in an app or are you just logged on to the application builder? It searches, you can search through all applications, the whole workspace, or just inside a particular app. Very useful, very fast, quite nice looking too. If you enter a number, it suggests to, not searching for the number, but the first suggestion would be to jump to page 123. And that gives you a very quick navigation in your application, actually. There is even more search syntax, and it's a separate tip because it used to work in older versions too. So you can apply this one in version, I don't know, 4.0. In the search, if you enter an application ID colon page ID, you jump to Pagedesigner for this particular app and page combination. Instead of the colon, you could also use a dash. It's very quick navigation. If you work on multiple apps, you can quickly jump to application 100, page 2, and then you jump to application 200, page 4, and so on. Very, very nice. So that's just an example. Or instead of a page ID, you can also specify as, and then you jump to shared components. Very nice, quick navigation, saves time and mouse clicks. A while ago, like 10 years or something like that, Apex extended their debugging facility to support debug levels. And actually, Apex Debug isn't debugging as in setting a breakpoint, stepping through code. It's more of a logging facility. So log levels are very interesting. And there's a definition of all those log levels. It ranges from 1 to 9. For whatever reason, they do not use 3 and 7. But depending on which log level you activate, it will write more or less information to the log. So you can specify it either in the URL, exactly there where you normally would put yes. You can more specific and say, well, level 4, that would be the equivalent to yes. Or you say, well, I tune it up a bit more and you specify level 6 or level 9 to get everything. Yeah, this is how you can do it. If you want to do it programmatically, you can also use Apex Debug Enable and specify the log level. But of course, that affects the current session. If you have a client calling you saying, hey, there's something weird going on, you can remotely activate debug for another session. Very useful. It's there since Apex 18, I think. Very, very nice, yeah. Remote debugging. If anyone used that successfully, please put a message in the chat. In the Apex URL, you can also specify the keyword remote to activate remote PL/SQL debugging. All you need to do there is set up your SQL developer, go to your package or function that you actually want to debug, set a breakpoint, run Apex with remote, then your PL/SQL, your SQL developer will pop up this nice dialog asking for a port and a local address. So what's this about? This is the database trying to connect to your client. So, and that's mostly a problem. You need to have an open port from the database to your client, specify this, and then everything works, in theory. Native condition types, it's tiny, but you know that, right? In any place in Apex where you can have a server-side condition, you can choose the type, and you can either use one of the predefined types. That's an example of current page is not in comma delimited list. That's a good way to do it. The alternative you see below, you can achieve the same result as a PL/SQL expression. And you probably wonder, hey, what's the point of doing, of choosing between those two? Actually, the first one is faster. than the second one. The second one means another, maybe unnecessary, dynamic SQL execution. And the first one is actually already coded into Apex's code. So that makes it a little bit faster. Yeah, same here. You know, if it's a really simple condition, make it faster, make it obvious by using a predefined type. Makes it so much simpler for the next developer to understand what's going on. And I just see in the chat, Arne Hattendorf from Germany, they actually managed to remote debug Apex once, years ago. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue. Personalize App Builder, and that's something that I don't know. It's a ticking thing for me. You know, we got interactive reports, and we give them out to our users, and we tell them, "Hey, interactive report is awesome. You can change it. You can move columns. You can save different views. Blah blah blah." And it's you know, it's perfect. And they go off and do it. And then we go back to application builder, and what you see there is an interactive report. But everyone keeps the default view of those icons, and they are like, you know, it's just not a lot of information. So it's better to switch to the list view and maybe add more columns. There's a ton of additional information out there. So you can add additional columns, you know, show, that's an example of showing some aliases, which authentication scheme is used, all of that. You can group them, you can sort them, whatever, and then save your view. Very helpful if you are in a workspace or in an application having many pages or many apps. Okay, and it's, you know, it's free. Speaking of free, a very underutilized feature of Apex, user preferences. I think it's there since day 1 or 2. It's an ability where Apex can store key value pairs for a particular use of a particular application. So it's quite simple. You can, for example, use a process to set a user preference for the currently locked on user. So you can see set this preference name with that item's value. Boom, very simple. Or you use the PL/SQL API, Apex util set preference, and then later on, you know, fetch the preference again by either using the API, or you can have an item with a source of preference. So your item's value will be fetched from a preference. I know, tiny thing, but can be very useful. Unfortunately, there is no Apex view to read out all those preferences. Might be a security thing, but I don't know. Another useful feature of Apex are Apex collections. I like to use them to temporarily store data in a session. And the good thing is I don't need to worry about cleaning up. It's still good if I clean it up. You know, if I do clean it up, but worst case, Apex will clean it up for me once the session is being removed. So what you can do is there is even a sample collections application. You can either you know, create collection entries manually with an API, Apex collection. You can read from an Apex collections view, and that's actually a good trick. We use it sometimes to speed up slow interactive reports. let's say your interactive report is based on a very slow query for whatever reason. Like it joins multiple tables, it does some computation, whatever. And then your users start to click on the interactive report and the slow query runs again and again. But on page load, you could run that slow query once, store the result in an Apex collection, and then base your interactive report on that collection. And that's usually then a bit faster because there is no computation anymore. It's just fetching the data from the collection. So it could look like that. It could be a before header process. Check if the collection with a given name is there, delete it, and create collection from query B, like better or bulk maybe. And then you pass in your query. And that, of course, could be a very big query. Then a collection is created, and your report would then fetch from the Apex collections view with the collection name and all those generic columns. Works quite nice. A new feature in Apex 18, a good example is collections again. If you are a SQL developer and you want to check your collections content, you get 0, nothing at all. Why? Because you're not in an Apex context. In your Apex app, you can see there is stuff in my collection, but not in a database. So what you can do is use the Apex Session Attach API from within your parsing schema. Pass in the application ID, page ID, and which session you want to connect to. And then you are part of that Apex session context, and you can query views like Apex collections. Attaching a session is one thing. The other thing is creating a session. So the Apex Session API also has provides a method to create a session context. So why would you need that, right? Think of it, you're running a scheduler job, a database job, whatever, right? Outside of an Apex session context, and you want to use something like Apex Mail. The Apex Mail API requires an Apex session context. So you can simply create an Apex session context and then work with all those wonderful APIs outside of Apex. Great stuff. Global application items. We need to speed up a bit. So application items are great in combination with Apex session sharing across multiple apps. It's a bit tricky because you need to set the scope of your application item to global and still have the same settings and the same application items in all your applications which you share your session across. All them have to be set to global, and then and only then Apex will distribute a value for an application item to all apps in that session sharing context. Yep, blah, blah. Compatibility modes. One thing you need to be aware of when upgrading your Apex application, your Apex installation. Let's say you upgrade from 5.1 to 19.2. You need to go into your app and change that compatibility mode. But before doing that, go to the release notes and read up on changed behavior. Because once you switch that mode to 19.2, your app might not work as before anymore, depending on what's being changed. But the documentation on that is really good. Just consult the release notes. So Apex uses this compatibility mode to change the Apex engine's behavior. So if they decide that from one version to another, something works a bit different than before, they control it through this compatibility mode to make sure that your old apps do not break. So you could keep your old compatibility mode and run your old app in an old, in an old Apex thing. But then you probably cannot use some of the new features. So it has to be balanced out, right? Old compatibility mode, but the latest features doesn't work together. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, another thing you need to do when upgrading Apex, go to your applications and go to utilities, consult the upgrade application wizard. It shows you things you could do. Like whenever there's something new in Apex, like Apex 19.1 introduced the new form region type, then this wizard will give you an ability to upgrade legacy form pages to the new form region type. So you can see how many occurrences you have, click on the number, see exactly which pages are using that, and then you can control whether or not you want to automatically upgrade that. We talked about debugging before. So enabling debug is one thing, but how do you look at debug? And that's simply from developer toolbar, click view debug, or go to your application utilities and find the debug messages thing. But most of the time, if you want to read debug messages from production systems, you probably do not have application builder installed there, except of course Jürgen. He lives in production only and he codes there. But everyone else, runtime only installation in production, so you don't have the fancy application builder, but you can read all the debug information from the view. Very nice. And you should build an automatic check on this view, because since a few versions, Apex automatically logs unhandled exceptions to the debug, no matter if debug was turned on or not. So that's a nice QA check for your production system. Are there any unhandled exceptions no user told us about? So, nice stuff. We talked about a few Apex dictionary views already, and there is a bunch, and you can even find them very easy. You go to some app, utilities, application express views, and then you can see all the views for all the nice Apex metadata. And there's even a query builder included. So you can click on it, you can apply filters, whatever. Or you query the Apex dictionary view to find other dictionary views. Simple, right? And there's even a nice comment everywhere. So it makes it very easy to understand how Apex is built. The session pop-up, very useful when debugging weird behavior. You can open it from the developer toolbar. It pops up, and there you can verify session state of all page and application items, even collection entries. So you can see what the database knows about your current item values. That might be different to what you see on the screen, because client and database are not always in sync if you do not pass page items to submit or something like that. Quite useful. Apex URL. Ooh, that's the ugly old Apex URL. It's not the nicer one from Apex 21. But basically, that's the information that's available in the view. So you have your ords. And that's funny. That's actually a public procedure that Apex provides. It's just PL SQL. And you know what? F has an argument that's called P, and it gets the whole ugly string passed in. And in that string, there's application ID, page ID, Apex session ID. And I need to hurry up a bit because we're running out of time. You get all the nice slides later on. Clear cache section, very, very important. parameter names could also be, you know, interactive report filters and things like that. To make it simple, there is a nice API, Apex Page Get URL, and you know what? It works in Apex 21 exactly the same way. It will return an Apex URL depending on your application settings, either the old style or the new, more friendly URL, including checksums if necessary, and so on. Boom! Action number 3 when upgrading Apex. You have to refresh, you have to upgrade your universal theme in every application. So go to an app, go to the theme, and there you find those buttons, verify or refresh. And if you want to be on a safe side, click verify. And then it lists up all the templates belonging to this theme, and which of those templates are out of sync to the new universal theme. Then simply hit refresh and you get all the latest and greatest goodies. Another thing you can look into to increase your productivity is Pagedesigner is actually very flexible. You can use the splitters to change sizes. You can collapse parts of which you don't need. You can take a tab and move it to another column, or you can switch to a 2-column layout. Maybe you think the middle part is unnecessary anyway. Nobody needs that. So whoop, switch to a 2-column layout and you might have a better overview. And then you can still drag and drop tabs from the left column to the right if you want that. It's quite nice. Or seal Apex hashtag on Twitter. You don't have to be on Twitter. You do not even have to sign up. You can simply follow the Apex news using that URL, twitter.com/hashtag/or/seal-apex, and you get all the latest and greatest information. That's very useful. And, you know, it's about community. It's about, sharing something you like, or even sometimes reach out for help. You know, if it's a tiny problem, you could think about asking it on Twitter, or bigger problems, the forum is a good place to do that. See, even famous members of the community sometimes reach out to ask questions to either the community or address the Apex dev team, and get responses within minutes sometimes. But don't abuse it, right? Jürgen is watching the hashtag. All right, tip number 35. There shouldn't be any Ajax calls on page load. So there is no reason why that would be a good idea. Think about it. You send a request to the server and you tell Apex, hey, please give me page 9. And Apex returns page 9 and your browser renders it. And then your browser fires off a page load Ajax call to the database saying, hey, please give me also this information, that information, this information. That's actually quite unnecessary because it's round trips all over. So a different solution could be, instead of using dynamic actions on page load, and I'm specifically referring to dynamic actions doing an Ajax call. So that would be set value using SQL or PL/SQL code, execute PL/SQL code, and the likes, right? Everything that has to go to the database. If you do a show or hide, you can do it on page load, of course. But instead of sending an Ajax call on page load, think of using a before header process. That might be way faster. Classic reports, I hate that name. Classic reports sounds like old, right? You say to old cars, to old people, to old songs. Hey, that's a classic. Yeah, But classic report isn't old. It's just a different type of report. And it has many features that are interesting. And the biggest one is the use of templates. So instead of this tabular list view, you could have a report looking like alerts, looking like badges, looking like cards, even like a conversation thingo. There are so many different built-in report templates that are very, very nice to use and make your app look so much nicer. In case anyone needs that, mostly plugin developers, that's quite a handy feature. Apex plugin util replace substitutions. In case you ever need to replace substitutions in a string. Email templates, a wonderful new feature in Apex 18, I guess. Maybe 18.2. Email templates let you define HTML and text variations of emails and using placeholders, and then use a nice Apex Mail API to fill in those placeholders. So there's a better view of that code. So you tell Apex Mail, hey, send an email, use that template and those placeholders and values. Boom. And suddenly it looks way nicer than your current text mails that you probably send off. There's so much that Apex brings us. Packaged applications, if you look at that, there's a ton. And you should actually, with each new Apex version, take a look at all those packaged apps. There are so many interesting solutions in there. There's inspiration, there is explanation, there's use cases you probably haven't thought of. So install all those apps and, you know, take a couple hours to review and to find new interesting ideas. But of course, installing all those apps manually is boring, right? If your time's paid, you could do it in a day or two, or you do it the smart way and you use Apex APIs to install packaged applications, scripts it. So there's a view, Apex PKG apps, which holds all the packaged application names. And then there's an Apex PKG app install API to install the packaged application. And boom, 30 seconds later, or maybe a couple minutes, and you have all the packaged apps installed in your workspace. That's magic. Inline dialogues, very nice underutilized feature. Define a region on your page as inline dialog, on position inline dialog, and then open it whenever you want. It's super fast and it looks quite nice. All you need to do is create a region on position inline dialogs, give it a template of inline dialog, and you're good. Then you can use the API to open it whenever you want. Advisor is always good. I know it's old, it could be updated a bit, but it's still very useful. It should be part of your development routine, right? Run the advisor once a day, once a week, whatever, depending on your coding style. It has a number of predefined checks, and it will point out all the findings, and then you can review that and maybe catch something before it hits the customer. Ooh, multiline cursor. Have you seen that? In the Apex Code Editor, you can actually create a cursor that spans multiple lines. So you can indent, outdent, you can type in, and it will apply to all the lines. Very useful. Cloning sessions. There's a special keyword in the request part of your URL. You can actually clone a session, and you would do it to open a certain page multiple times without overriding your session state. So you can open, let's say, page 2 customer details, once for customer A and in a clone session for customer B, and look at them at the same time. Quite nice. Works only if the Apex instance session parameter clone session enabled is set to yes. There is no way to set it other than this. Ooh, Apex 19 brought us this amazing package, Apex Data Parser. It's like, I don't know, witchcraft. It just works brilliantly. Thank you, Carsten, for doing that. In short, you can pass in Excel files, CSV, JSON, whatever, XML, and query it. It's quite as simple as in this example. Carsten has a whole session on this. It's great. It saves so much time. And then last tip, that's basically your homework. There is a bunch of cross-application reports. So if you go to your application builder workspace utilities, the right-hand sidebar, there is a bunch of interesting reports. You can get an overview of all your apps, the build statuses and whatnot. Take a look, browse through that. There might be something useful for you in it. Yeah. So there is a bunch of links, and I thank you. So I'll take a look at the Q&A to see if you guys have any questions. If I still have time, I don't know that.
So yeah, there are many questions, and you still have like 5-6 minutes.
Okay, I'll do my best.
So you have 3 questions in the Q&A window if you see it, and then there will be the chat with a bunch of things inside, all around.
Okay. So what's an interesting question? So most questions have been answered already by the other panelists. There's stuff like, what's the constraint of using a shared session between more than one application? Do they need to have the same authentication scheme, or share the same username repository? No, not at all. The only limitation is they have to be in the same workspace. That's it. You can have different authentication schemes, whatever. No, there is not even a limited number of apps. What's in the chat? Boy, you were busy.
Yeah, there was quite some stuff going on.
So most questions are around the recordings, and yes, they will be available later on. Another question, is there a limit of number of columns in a collection? And of course, yes, there is. So Apex internally, the collections, they're just a table, right? Apex has a table internally, which uses your session ID, collection name, and then has a bunch of columns. There's like 50 character columns, 5 number columns, 5 date columns, XML type, blob, CLOB, and I think that's basically it. So if you need something bigger, you have to revert to a custom solution. Other than that, guys, it's amazing. I see there is a couple hundred participants. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to everyone here. Stay home, stay safe, and I bet we are all lucky to use an amazing tool like Apex. It makes it easier in times like that to convince clients to work remotely. Thank you all from the spaceship.
Thanks so much, Peter.
I probably need to click somewhere.